Hello everyone, this is the Undying Nephilim, and today I am going to make a video and show you guys the next faction that is getting added into Hyrule Conquest. And if it wasn't obvious by the hero choices, it is the Sheikah. So, just before I begin, like I said in my last video, this next update will come out on the Alpha 23 version of 0 AD, not Alpha 24 or Alpha 25, which should be out sometime pretty soon. And the reason for that is because there's tons of compatibility issues that we have to work with that'll probably take several months to get through. And it's already been, I think, 6 months since the last update to Hyrule Conquest, and frankly, I don't want you guys to wait any longer. So I went back to Alpha 23 and backwards ported the Sheikah, and they're working in it. So yeah, that is why I'm using a slightly older version of the engine, and you will too if you want to try this out. Another thing I want to note before I begin is normally when I release a new version of Hyrule Conquest, I release 2 new factions, but because this delay was so long because of all the compatibility issues, I'm just going to release the Sheikah by themselves because, again, I don't want you guys to wait several months. And for the next several months, we really need to focus on getting the engine compatible, or getting Hyrule Conquest compatible with newer versions of the engine. So the next release will just have the Sheikah, not 2 factions. And also, I will be going into detail about the Sheikah heroes in this video. I normally save all the heroes for a separate video, but since there's only going to be 1 faction, I feel like I could just do it all in 1 video. So I'll also I'll also look at their Titan too. But for now, I will go through their roster of units, some gameplay details, and I'll save the heroes for later. So I'll just go ahead and pick 3 of them for now. So the Sheikah. What do the Sheikah got that other factions don't? Well, for one, they have quite a few units with stealth. I just made a video recently going into details about stealth, so I won't go into too much detail about how it works in this video. They have quite a few units with camouflage, which is very similar to stealth. As far as the lore goes, the Sheikah are kind of this secretive, secret society, so to speak. They're kind of very, very reclusive. They try not to get directly involved in the politics of Hyrule, even though they are intimately involved, but in a more sort of sneaky and implicit way. They're connected to the Hylian royal family. They basically keep tabs on who's in charge, and if things are going badly, they'll assassinate who's in charge. They plant people they want in governments, and they kind of control Hyrule from the shadows. Their motivation for that is sort of to keep Hyrule stable, but obviously there's different subgroups within the Sheikah that all have different agendas, and some of them more nefarious than others. And to represent the different groups in the Sheikah, the faction you play as will actually be composed of 7 different Sheikah tribes. So much like the Kingdom of Hyrule, when you train groups of units, their appearances will differ depending on the tribe. So, like, for example, right here, these are actually the same unit. They're the basic soldier unit that the Sheikah have, but as you can see, they are both from 2 completely different tribes. At the moment, the tribes are completely randomized when you train them from the buildings, so I'm not sure if that'll change in the future, but it might. But for now, they're randomized, just like the Hylian houses when you play as the Kingdom of Hyrule. So, yeah. I guess I will build some of their buildings and go through their roster of units. So let's turn on Instant Build and make some of their stuff. So build that, and we'll build that. We'll build their Wonder up here, so I can make their Titan, and then where's the other building that makes troops? This one here. So let me train all of their units, and I'll go into some detail about them all. Got quite a few units. And the string of errors up here is actually debugging information. It's letting me know that a unit has become stealthed or camouflaged because, like I said, quite a few of their units have that ability. Anyway, I think that is all of their units, and then I'll go ahead and make the Titan up here. I love the Sheikah Titan, it's pretty cool. But anyway, let me organize these units and then start going through them. Alrighty. So, where should I start? Actually, I'll start with this unit way up here that I started with. This is the Sheikah Spy. It is the scout unit of the Sheikah. It is stealth, so it is always invisible unless it's attacking. And, like all other scout units in the game, it will have the ability to see other invisible units. So, pretty useful, especially in the early game. If you're fighting against the Sheikah, you'll probably actually want to keep your scout near your base, because these guys could sneak in and start picking off some of your workers. Although, if that ends up being too powerful, I might make it so the Civil Center can actually see invisible units, but for now it can't. That's something that'll probably change as people play test and get mad at how overpowered they are. But yeah, that is the Sheikah's scout unit, the Spy. And like all, well, not all, but most of the Sheikah units, the appearance of the Spy will be randomized depending on what tribe comes out of the building. This one is from the Solari tribe, which is the ones that have the black cloaks and the really dark-looking outfits. That's based on the hood that Zelda wears in Twilight Princess. So that's what that tribe's aesthetics are based on. So alright, let's go through some of their military units. We'll go with the first one, which is the Trainee, which is also these two here. So I guess I'll just bring them all together. As you can see, this group of trainees is a bunch of Yigas. These ones right here are the Necluda tribe, and these ones are the Kokari tribe. So, the Trainee is the basic Sheikah soldier unit. It's not particularly impressive, but they're early game units, so you'll probably train quite a few of them, no pun intended, early in the game, and use them to defend yourselves or maybe harass workers or something. Even though they're one of, if not the weakest unit in the Sheikah roster, they actually are slightly better than most of the low-level soldiers of other factions, because the Sheikah are just kind of awesome like that. But they don't really have any special abilities or anything. However, if you pick one of the heroes, which I believe is Paya, trainees actually gain camouflage, so if you pick her, they will be invisible when they're standing still, which is pretty useful, especially early in the game. And that is the Trainee. And then second up is the Hawkeyes, which is the Sheikah's archer unit. They are a very, very long-ranged sniper kind of unit, and they are the only archer unit that has 100% accuracy, so they will always hit their targets. The only exception being if they're debuffed by an enemy ability. So, like, say an enemy, like for instance, the Goma, the Shroud Walker creates that giant cloud that messes up the accuracy of enemy units. So that is one case when their accuracy would not be 100%. But unless they're debuffed, they will always hit their targets. They're the only archer unit in the game that has 100% accuracy right out of the gate. So that's pretty useful. And if you pick Pura as your Sheikah hero, they'll get the Hawkeye masks, which increases their damage, and I think it doubles their range. So if you pick Pura as your hero, I believe these are actually the longest ranged archer unit in the entire game. I could be wrong. I think the Gerudo Archer might have slightly more range, but off the top of my head, I actually think these guys do when you pick Pura as your hero. So yeah, that is the Sheikah Hawkeye. Really, really cool archer unit. And then next up is the Protector, which is this Sheikah that has a quarterstaff. At the moment, we don't have attachments to battalions in the engine, but when we do, this is a unit that you attach to a battalion, and it will improve the battalion in some way. So if when all the features are finally added in, what I do is I'd click on this guy, and then I'd probably have something down here that I'd click on, and then I'd click on a battalion, and they'd go over to the battalion, and they'd become part of the battalion. Kind of like if you played the first Dawn of War, it'd be something like that, how you could attach commanders and stuff to battalions, and they'd give them certain abilities. So what the Protector does is it increases the dodge and parry rate of the battalion it's attached to. So if I attached it to these trainees, and they'd suddenly be even better at dodging enemy attacks, both in melee and ranged, which is pretty cool. And the Protector itself is just a kind of a simple melee unit with a very high parry or dodge rate. It does a little bit of blunt damage with its quarterstaff. But other than that, by itself, it's not particularly impressive. Alrighty, so next up are the only cavalry unit that the Sheikah has, the Sidewinders. In terms of stats, they're not super impressive compared to cavalry of a lot of other factions, but one thing that is very, very useful with them is the fact that they're camouflaged. So I believe they're the only cavalry unit in the entire game that has some form of invisibility, which is pretty impressive. So as long as these guys are standing still, they are invisible, which makes them very, very nasty for ambushes, especially if you know that an enemy army is passing through a choke point or something. You could set up a few of these guys in the choke point, and then as the enemy army comes through, these horses will start popping out of thin air and start slaughtering their army and catch them off guard. So that is really, really useful. I imagine you guys could probably imagine the raiding potential these units have because of their camouflage, like picking off enemy workers and things like that. So thank goodness they're not an early game unit. They're more like a mid game unit, because they would probably be really, really overpowered, sending groups of these guys to pick off workers at the start of a match. So yeah, that is the Sheikah Sidewinder, sporting the attire of the Solari clan. Alrighty, what other units? I'll do this one next. The Blademaster, which is the commander unit of the Sheikah. Blademaster improves the performance of all the units around it, like all the commander units. I haven't decided exactly what stats it'll improve, but probably, you know, their combat damage or their attack rate, their movement speed, stuff like that. It's one of the better commander units in the game because even by itself, it's got a pretty good attack, pretty decent stats all around. This one is sporting the appearance of the Nirvata clan, which are the Sheikah monks. It's got its nice little katana there. And yeah, that is the Blademaster, the Sheikah commander unit. Alrighty, let's see, who's over here? Alright, the Assassins. Probably the iconic Sheikah unit. The Assassin, as its name implies, is really, really good at killing things. They also have complete stealth, so they are always invisible, except when they're attacking. Although, if you select Sheik as your hero, Sheik has an upgrade which makes them invisible even when they're attacking enemy units. So, if you pick Sheik and you train these guys, the only way the enemy can see them is if they have scouts or watchtowers to detect them. So obviously, the they are probably the nastiest raiding unit in the game because they'll always be invisible if you pick Sheik. So they'd be really, really, really good at picking off workers and just massacring enemy armies that don't have any detector units at all. Although a wise enough player will probably know if they're facing the Sheikah, they'll want a few scouts in their armies. Because, yeah, these guys... If an enemy doesn't have any detection, just several of these battalions could probably pick off an entire army in just a minute. So yeah, that is the Sheikah Assassin. Really, really nasty melee unit. Next up are the Needlers, which is a very, very nasty ranged unit. They don't have a lot of range, but when we add poison into the engine, their attack will deal poison damage to the enemy. And their attack is also ignores armor, so they always do true damage. So their attack will always deal the same amount of damage regardless of the armor stats of an enemy. And they also have camouflage, so as long as they're standing still, they're invisible. So they are a pretty nasty ranged unit. But as you might have noticed, though, a lot of the battalion sizes for Sheikah units are pretty small. Like, the Needlers only have 4 units in their battalion. That's because a lot of their units are just really, really strong on a one-to-one basis compared to those of other factions. They're almost like squishy Dark Nuts in a way. Like the Dark Nuts have really small battalions because they have such high armor stats and really, really good combat stats. The Sheikah don't have very good armor or hit points, so they're pretty squishy units, but they have very, very high damage output. So they're almost like a faction of glass cannons in a way. But that's one of the reasons why their battalions have such a small unit count compared to other factions. Anyway, next up, that is the Spy, which I already showed you guys. Alright, the Smokescreener. The Smokescreener is a lot like the Protector, it's a unit that you attach to battalions. And what the Smokescreener does is when you attach it to a battalion, when you engage an enemy in combat, it'll throw down its Deku Nuts and create like a little distorting cloud around the battalion that makes them harder to target. So enemy projectiles will miss more often, and enemy units around them will lose their... they won't completely lose their line of sight, but like their visual range will shrink to like a really small radius. So they'll disrupt the vision of enemies. In fact, I'm considering making it so that the Smokescreener's ability will even cancel out detection. So, as you can imagine, if you attach a Smokescreener to a battalion of assassins, and the assassins manage to get in range of scout units or towers, and then the Smokescreener starts shooting down its little Deku Nut clouds, you'll just have a cloud going through an enemy base, taking out enemy units, and there might not be much you can do to detect them. That might be really overpowered, though, so that's something that'll have to be decided on later on, after a bunch of testing is done. But it's definitely something I'm considering, because it sounds like a really cool ability. But anyway, that's the Smokescreener. By itself, it's kind of useless. It doesn't really do much damage because it's kind of a support thing. Although right now, because battalion attachments aren't in the engine, right now it just throws down the Deku Nuts and creates clouds just out wherever the attack hits, not over battalions. But anyway, that is a Smokescreener. Next up is the Saboteur, which is one of the Sheikah siege units. They carry around the big spiky bombs, and like the what unit was it? Labrana has a unit that does something similar. The Tokay Gorilla, that's it. Like that unit, what you do is you go near an enemy base, and then you plant the bomb next to it, and then you run away with these guys, and then the bombs detonate, and they do lots of damage to buildings. So, yeah, that's the Saboteur. It is the Sheikah siege unit, or one of their 2 siege units. And they have camouflage, so as long as they're standing still, they're invisible. However, if I remember right, if you pick Sheik as your hero, they actually gain stealth so that they're always invisible except when they plant their bombs, which is really nasty. Anyway, let's get to some of the creature units. The Sheikah actually have quite a few creature units. First up are the Ghoul Rats from Twilight Princess. The Ghoul Rats are pretty awesome. In terms of stats, they're pretty crappy. They have very, very low stats and attacks, but they're very cheap. Their battalion size is pretty decent for the cost, and so you can field quite a few of these pretty fast and pretty early in the game. And they are an early game unit, but their usefulness comes from the fact that they can pass through enemy walls and buildings, which in the early game might not be too useful because most factions can't build walls until later in the game, but say an enemy had a wall here, they just pass like right under the wall and go through it. And they're camouflaged too, so as long as they're sitting still, they're invisible. So I can imagine them being a pretty decent raiding unit actually for picking off enemy workers, or just hiding them at like say there's a node here where you build an expansion, or like you go to some area with a bunch of resources and you park a few of them there to poke at enemy workers that come by. So yeah, those are the Ghoul Rats. Anyway, next up are the Floor Masters. Really, really cool creature unit. These guys are invisible, as they were in Ocarina of Time. And they're just kind of a standard melee creature unit. And there's nothing too amazing about their stats. Most of their use comes from the fact that they're invisible. But, like in Ocarina of Time, when you slay these guys, they will spawn a bunch of little smaller versions of themselves, which I'll go ahead and demonstrate now by killing them. So yeah, now there's a bunch of little small Floor Masters. Which I haven't decided if the small ones have stealth or not. I feel like that might be a little bit too powerful. So at the moment they don't, the smaller versions don't have any stealth or camouflage or anything. But they might one day if they end up not being too powerful. So yeah, that is the Floor Master, which is probably one of my favorite Sheikah units, just because they're so nasty and they're very useful. I'm not sure if they'll be a tier 1 or a tier 2 unit. Probably tier 2, because they seem like they could be really nasty early in the game. And anyway, next up are the other version of the hand units, the Wall Masters, which are these creepy crawlies. And the Wall Masters are actually a siege unit. So what they do is you bring them up to an enemy building and they start just bashing the building apart like a siege unit, like a battering ram. And they're a tier 2 unit, so you can get them pretty early in the game to start pounding on enemy buildings. But once abilities are added into the engine, another thing they'll be able to do is grab enemy units and kind of like hold them in place and incapacitate them. So like say I'm facing these three guys right here, and then we have the abilities added. I'll click on the ability, and then I'll click on this battalion. These three guys, they'd each try and grab these guys and hold them in place so they couldn't do anything. And then you could bring in your other combat units to just kind of wail on them while they're held in place by the Wall Masters. So that'll make them pretty useful. I mean, they're already useful now because they're a siege unit, and they're one of the only siege units the Sheikahs have. But later on down the road, they'll become even more useful, because they'll be able to incapacitate enemy units. So yeah, those are the Wall Masters. I might even give them the ability to kind of like, I guess it'd be kind of like a teleport, because in Ocarina of Time, they would like kind of drop down from the roof and then teleport you to a different location. So I actually might make it so they have a teleporting ability, so maybe within your territory I could like click here, and then it'd show them kind of like jumping up and fading into the sky and then like falling down and landing over there. Something like that. That might be pretty cool. Or alternatively, instead of teleporting, it could actually be the inverse, where say there's an enemy battalion over here and they're just hanging out over there. And then I click on the ability and I have them do it to the battalion. They grab the battalion and they teleport them over to here, and then they get wailed on by all my other units here. That might be really cool. Lots of creative things I could probably do with that, but that is for another time. For now, they're just a siege unit. And I actually think they have camouflage, so as long as they're standing still, they're invisible. Alrighty. Next up are the crows. They are based on the statues of crows in the Shadow Temple. So in the Sheikah mythology, they're kind of like guardians of the underworld, kind of like a Cerberus sort of thing. Or pick any mythology on Earth, and they're like that. They're guardians of the underworld. And the Sheikah can summon them to do their bidding. And they are a flying camouflage unit, which is actually a pretty rare ability in the game. The only other flying unit that has camouflage is the Darknet Patras. So as long as they're standing still, or I guess flying still, they're completely invisible, which makes them really, really good for setting up ambushes, because you could park them over a bunch of trees. And then when an enemy army is walking by, they'll just dive bomb from over the trees and start hacking away and pecking away at enemy units. In fact, they're probably the best unit you can use to harass enemy workers, because, yeah, just... Or, so, like, yeah, actually, like, park them above a rupee deposit, and when an enemy comes and sets up a little base here and starts gathering from the rupees, they'll just start picking away at the workers. Oh, that would be so useful. I didn't even think about that. You can just hide them above resources and start harassing enemy workers. That's so useful. But yeah, those are the Crowlings. Alrighty, and then I think we are down to the last Sheikah unit, except for their hero units. That would be the Devoured, which has been in Hyrule Conquest, or more specifically Hyrule Total War, since what, 2011. They're one of the oldest Sheikah things I've come up with. And if you played Ocarina of Time, you know that the Shadow Temple is infested by this creature called Bongo Bongo. And basically the Devoured are like mini versions of them. Devoured have stealth, so they're completely invisible except when they're attacking. They're a pretty slow unit, but they're a very, very powerful creature unit. And then one of the features that Ascaris and I want to add to 0 AD is some kind of morale system where units will start running away when they encounter something really scary, and this will be the main ability of the Devoured. They'll be able to scare away enemy units, so they're kind of like a crowd control unit. And I'm also considering giving them the ability to teleport, where they'll turn into like a little pile of ooze that like zooms over to a different location. So they might have teleporting ability too. And actually there is a creature unit I forgot to train, but I'm not seeing it. I might have forgotten to add it to one of the buildings. So there actually is another unit the Sheikah have that I stupidly forgot to put in the building, but I will go ahead and show it at the very, very end of the video. There'll be like an awkward cut at the end of the video, and then I'll show the the last Sheikah unit. Alrighty, so I guess I will go into detail about the Sheikah heroes, the units attached to those heroes, and then I will do the Titan. But anyway, Sheikah heroes, like all factions, they've got 6 heroes, which I will go into detail now. Sorry, I was moving them because I had placed them in the editor and all of their animations were out of sync, so for some reason it's a little bug in 0 AD. When you place something on a map and it doesn't do anything and it's sitting there, all of the animations for all the different parts on a model will be completely out of sync, but as soon as you move them, all the animations will snap back in place and they'll function properly. So now they're all in sync. I'm not sure why it does that, but I'll probably bother some of the 0 AD staff about that later, because it's something I've always wondered and wanted fixed. But anyway, Little tangent there. Sheikah heroes. Like all factions, they've got 2 tier 1 heroes, 2 tier 2 heroes, and 2 tier 3 heroes. So I'll start with the lower level ones. First up is Paya, who is very, very annoyed that I'm giving her orders. So Paya, on her own, has got a quarterstaff, and I haven't done all the animations yet, but she will fight with a drunken Shaolin fist sort of fighting style, which will be really funny. I actually did a little animation a few weeks ago of her doing that to a bunch of poor Yigas, so she'll fight like that in the game, where she basically fights like a drunkard. Which is an actual martial art, by the way. You should look it up. It's pretty awesome. Shaolin Drunken Fist. Sometimes it's called Drunken Monkey, but it's a really, really interesting martial art. Especially if you're using that sort of martial art against an unsuspecting person, the results are usually pretty funny. But anyway, she has a very, very high dodge or parry rating. I think it's like 25%. Not seeing it in the stats, but I'm pretty sure she has like a 25 or 30% dodge rating, which is really, really high, even for a hero. She does not have a hero unit attached to her, but as I said earlier, she makes it so that trainees have camouflage. And if I remember correctly, she also gives you the ability to have line of sight with cuckoos. So if you bring a unit near a cuckoo, you'll gain the line of sight of it. So if there's cuckoos around the map and you're sending your scout around to explore the map, and your scout walks by a cuckoo, it'll reveal everything around the cuckoo until it's killed. So that's really useful. A pretty unique hero ability. But anyway, that is Paya. Next up is Pura, which is Impa's older sister, who actually appears younger than Impa. For lore reasons, I won't get into the details of now. But Pura actually is an archer hero. In Nephi lore, or in Hyrule Conquest, Nephi canon lore, whatever you want to call it, she's actually the Sheikah that created the Hawkeye masks. So, as you might suspect, when you pick her as your hero, she gives the Hawkeye masks to the Hawkeye archers. Over here somewhere, right there. Which doubles their range and increases their attack damage and stuff. So yeah, she is an archer hero, and I actually think she improves the Sheikah workers, too. I think she gives them camouflage or some other ability. I can't remember off the top of my head. And she herself is an archer with a 100% accuracy like the Hawkeyes, so really powerful archer. And then, next up is Sheik from Ocarina of Time. In Nephi lore, Sheik is probably a little bit different than in Ocarina of Time. Don't want to spoil it, but Sheik is an assassin hero, naturally. Sheik has stealth, so Sheik is completely invisible except when attacking or, spotted by a detector. So a really good hero for harassing enemies. And I actually think Sheik will throw needles. And then when the capacity to have multiple attacks is added into the engine, Sheik will also have like a melee attack too. Probably the whip that Sheik has in Super Smash Bros. But anyway, Sheik's unit is the Dead Hand, which is a unit I have shown before. Originally, Dead Hand was going to be a mercenary unit that that Shadow factions had, but I think, based on the lore of Sheik, I actually think Dead Hand is more interesting attached to Sheik. So, I guess I'll go through what the Dead Hand does again. It's in another video I did several years ago called Mercenaries, I think. But what the Dead Hand does is it spawns an infinitely respawning battalion of these arms. So it's a regenerating battalion. You don't have to come into your territory and replenish the battalion, which isn't even in the engine yet, so it's extra useful right now. And that's its primary ability, is that it can keep regenerating these little arms that follow it around. And also, I'm thinking when it kills an enemy unit, it adds an extra arm to its battalion. So, say this guy hypothetically kills, like, 50 enemies. It would have, like, 50 of these arms following it around. Although, I'll probably cap it off at, like, 10 or something so it doesn't get out of hand. But, yeah. That is the Dead Hand. Really, really cool unit. I love how creepy they are. One of my favorite enemies from Ocarina of Time. So that is Sheik. Next up is Koga, the leader of the Yiga clan. And as you might suspect, he gives Yiga-like abilities. If I remember right, he improves most of your melee units. He improves their HP and their, not their armor, their HP and their combat damage. And his unique unit is the Demon Carver, which will always appear as a Yiga. It won't change appearance based on clans because, well, he's a Yiga. So the Demon Carvers have a damage bonus against creatures, and they siphon health from enemies. So as long as they're attacking an enemy, their health will be regenerating with each hit they deal. So they're kind of like leeches in that regard. And they're pretty fast, too. I actually might make it so that they're always running, so that they're really fast, kind of like a cavalry unit. But I haven't decided yet. But I might do that. So yeah, that is the Demon Carver. And then next up is Impa. Fan favorite. And probably my favorite Sheikah hero. Right there. So yeah, Impa gives a bunch of armor-related abilities. If I remember right, when you select her, she gives a tech that adds shields to the trainees, the Blademasters, and I don't think she gives it to the cavalry, although it could be wrong. I think she gives the shields to one other unit, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But by herself, she's a really, really strong melee combat unit. She's basically like a Hylian knight in terms of stats, but except stronger. If I remember right, she also deals true damage too, so she just ignores armor with her attacks. Let me go ahead and look at the stats. I don't see true damage on there, but oh my gosh, she has a 50% dodge rate. I think that's a mistake. She should not have a 50% dodge rate. If anything, Paya should have the 50% dodge rate, so I need to go and fix that. But at the moment, as of this video, Impa has a 50% dodge rate, which means half the attacks that are dealt against her just completely miss. It's a little too high. Anyway, Impa's unit is the Executioner, which is this lady with the large Executioner sword. In terms of Nephi lore, these units chop the heads off of criminals for execution, which Impa might have done to a certain Sheikah Titan sometime in the past. So the Executioners are a pretty slow-moving unit, but they deal true damage, which means they ignore enemy armor, and in addition to that, they actually temporarily damage the armor stats of enemy units. So they ignore the armor of enemies, and they also lower the armor with each hit. So as they're attacking enemy units, all of your other units will be able to deal increased damage to them because their armor stats are going down. So very, very useful unit, especially against Dark Nuts and Gorons, or other factions that have very high armor stats for a lot of their units. Especially Dark Nuts. Alrighty. And the last Sheikah hero, Maz Koshia, the Ancient Monk, who is a mage unit, a melee mage unit, who attacks with lightning-based attacks and hovering swords and whatnot. So, very, very, very powerful hero unit. And his unit that he gives is the Nirvata Monk, which is basically just a lesser version of him. They shoot out lightning and stuff. And so yeah, they're a mage unit. In fact, if I remember right, they are the only mage unit that the Sheikah have. They do have The one unit I haven't shown might count as a mage, which will make more sense when I show the unit at the end of the video, but I'm not sure. But if not, this is the only mage unit that the Sheikah actually have. And they shoot out a bunch of lightning. In terms of what Maz Koshia does, is he gives, I think, every single Sheikah unit some kind of magic defense or magic resistance. So if you're playing against a faction that has a lot of mages, you'll probably want to select him as your hero. So if you're going against like the fairies, for instance, he might be a good pick. Or the Zora, because it'll make all your units a little more resistant to their mages, which is definitely useful because the Sheikah don't have a lot of magic protection as it is, except for the unit I didn't show. But anyway, I think that is it for their heroes and the hero units. So I guess we will go on to the Titan, or the Wonder first, that the Titan's made from. The Wonder is the Shadow Seal from Ocarina of Time, the giant seal in front of the Shadow Temple. I slightly tweaked the design, but I decided to include the sort of glowing circle thing from the 3DS remake. But I slightly tweaked the design, like how the torches are. Although I think I kept the door the same as Ocarina of Time. But I really like the Shadow Seal. I think it's really cool. And on the actual Shadow Temple map, there'll be kind of like a doodad version of this that goes into the temple, which will be really cool. Anyway, the Sheikah Titan. Bongo Bongo. Probably one of my favorite boss creatures from the entire series, and it might even be my favorite from Ocarina of Time, although I'm very fond of the Goma Queen too. A Bongo Bongo has camouflage, so as long as Bongo is completely still, no one can see it. And I think it's the only Titan in the game that has any kind of invisibility like that, which is really useful. So you can actually ambush an enemy army with Bongo Bongo, which is just would probably be really funny. I'm imagining like I'm walking my army through here, and then suddenly like this giant freaking blob with hands just starts going crazy and knocking the crap out of their army. I imagine it'd be pretty startling. But anyway, Bongo Bongo is kind of a crowd control unit, so it just slaps enemies around with his hands, and it's also a sort of siege unit too, so it deals quite a bit of damage to buildings. And I apologize for the cat in the background. He decided to get in on this video. But anyway, yeah, that is the Sheikah Titan. So that is most of the stuff that their faction has, except for the one unit I forgot to show. So I'll go ahead and do a little awkward cut here and show you guys the last Sheikah unit. So, alright, prepare for an awkward video cut. Alrighty, I am back to show the last Sheikah unit. Because I forgot to add it as a trainable unit, like an idiot. So anyway, the last unit that the Sheikah can make is the Moa. These little floating monster things. So, what the Moa is it's actually kind of like the Protector and the Smokescreener. It's something you'll be able to attach to battalions. And what it does is it makes the battalion, it gives them camouflage. So if you attach it to a battalion that doesn't have camouflage, it'll make it so that they do have it. And it also increases magic resistance, so it makes them a little bit better at going up against mage units. And on its own, it's got a little tiny melee attack, so it's not particularly strong on its own. But yeah, that was the last Sheikah unit that I didn't get to show earlier. So anyway, I think that's it for the Sheikah. I think I've shown just about everything of theirs. Let me double check and make sure. Right, yeah, I think that's about it. So yeah, hopefully the Sheikah look cool. I again apologize that it took about 6 months to get here. It should not have taken that long. But we kind of had quite a few issues getting Hyrule Conquest compatible with the new version of 0AD, which we ended up abandoning for now so I could get this out for you guys on time. But after I release this publicly, that's probably what we'll be doing through August and September. We'll be porting everything to the 0.25 version of 0AD, which has a lot of performance fixes, which I'm hoping goes well, because this engine does need a few performance fixes, because a lot of people with lower specs have reported really, really terrible frame rates, which is why I made a low poly patch. But anyway, so yeah, if you are a patron, the Sheikah have been available for download since yesterday, I think. So you guys can go ahead and try out the Sheikah if you want. As far as the public release, I normally release everything about a month after I let patrons try it out, but I honestly might release the Sheikah just sometime in the next few days, because it's been such a long delay since the last version of Hyrule Conquest, like 6 months now. So I'll probably release them for all you guys publicly in the next few days. So keep your eyes out on the ModDB page. Just remember to use the Alpha 23 version of 0AD, not the new one. If you install the new version and then you put this mod on it, it'll yeah, I mean, it'll be completely broken. I'll just leave it at that. So yeah, if you guys like this and you like all the work I've done, feel free to check out my Patreon and stay tuned for more stuff. Hopefully there won't be another 6-month delay when they release a new version of 0AD. Hopefully it'll go much smoother next time. But anyway, thank you guys for listening, and I hope you all have a good one.
Hey, listen!